tuned in to KCAA, the station that leaves no listener behind.
And now, it's For the People with Judge Herb Dodell.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I love this music, Gary. You know that? The more I hear it, I hear it all the time.
Is it ringing in your head?
It is, you know. And I just got off the phone. With the writer of the song.
Oh, really?
Yeah, his name is Seven Aurelius. He's doing Kanye West's album right now.
Really?
Yeah, he's scoring his TV show and whatever. He wrote the music to this and helped me do the design on the cover. So,
man,
acknowledgement to you, Seven.
You're a player, Judge.
Hey, but people ask me questions a lot of times, and I like to think about responding to them on the show because that's what we're doing here.
Yeah.
You know, I was thinking about the fact that there's some TV show coming out. They're going to have the same name as us.
Oh, really?
That's what they say. So, I'm hoping that doesn't end up in any kind of issues.
Well, but, I mean, should you trademark it?
I don't know about it, but I used to be a copyright lawyer in the very, very beginning. I was a member of the Copyright Society and
really
whatever. Yeah. In fact, one of the songs on Seven's album with Kanye West was written on my piano, which was owned by Johnny Mercer. And he wrote Moon River on that piano.
Really?
So, yeah.
Well, next time I come out, and you're shooting YouTube videos, and we're gonna you have a Judge Herb Dodell YouTube channel coming up. I think the first video is going to be posted, knock on wood, Thursday.
Hey, it's moving along at glacial speed. There's no question about that.
But it's going to be cool, man. You're going to give advice there, too?
Yeah, well, the reason we call the show For the People is really because it's for the people. We've said this before.
Yes.
Don't want to be redundant, but the fact of the matter is I hope to be able to answer people's questions and their inquiries and give them some guidance so they will feel less anxious about what they're about to become involved in. And it's all about a sense of security and certainty. So that's what we're doing. So I'm trying to write down some of the questions people ask me about and address them on the show.
That's great.
Got some great stuff coming up in the future. Really interesting subject matters. So today, well, somebody asked me what does a general calendar looks like. What does my general calendar look like every day?
Yeah, well, I mean, you're an acting judge, by the way. People who are just tuning into today's show for the first time, Judge Herb Dodell is actually a judge, a acting judge, which is very rare to have an acting judge on the radio.
Part-time.
Well, it doesn't matter. You're still working. I'm working part-time in radio, so still call me a talk show host.
But it's interesting. I was talking to my clerk. I have 27 cases on calendar for tomorrow.
Oh, you got to work tomorrow?
I'm working tomorrow, yeah. So
where at?
In Ventura.
Ventura, huh?
Small claims court.
Are you doing the Heather Locklear case tomorrow? Did you hear about that one?
No, but you never know.
She got arrested last night for domestic abuse and violence. Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Well, one of the big differences that people are asking about right now is civil harassment, stalking, things like cyberbullying, which we're going to talk about today, and domestic violence. There's a qualitative difference because domestic violence cases are heard in family court where there are side issues like custody and things like that. You don't get that in general civil harassment, stalking, violence cases.
Really? So they're different.
Well, they're different in that regard. It's a little bit more expansive in domestic violence, but it's easier to get a restraining order in domestic violence than it is in general civil harassment, because you have, and the reason for it, I think, is that in the civil side, quasi-criminal, which is what we do, there are usually legal remedies. Like you could sue somebody for nuisance or negligence or things like that, which generally are not going to be part of the subject matter in domestic violence cases. Although the criteria for being in the family court is usually some kind of relationship. It doesn't have to be a current relationship. It could be a past relationship.
Can it be boyfriend, girlfriend?
Yes, it can.
Okay, well, this is what happened with Heather Locklear. I guess she attacked her boyfriend last night, and she also attacked 3 deputies that were trying to restrain her, and she got a felony count of domestic violence against her.
Well, that's not necessarily a felony count.
Well, that's what they said.
Assault on a police officer, Section 148, I think is the code section, is not necessarily a felony.
No, the misdemeanors were the felony. I mean, the misdemeanors was the deputies. There are 3 misdemeanors, but the felony count was against her boyfriend. She attacked her boyfriend, supposedly, and they charged her with a felony. Would you hear that case, or that would go somewhere else?
I wouldn't hear any civil ramifications of it. All I would hear would be the request by one party or the other for a restraining order.
Okay. Well, maybe you will. That'd be interesting.
You know, I'm not doing restraining orders right now. I've been off restraining orders for about
you're not doing
6 months or so, I guess.
Why?
Because I'm doing small claims.
Oh, okay. So
I like it.
You like small claims better.
I do, because it's the stories are better, actually.
Right. It keeps you more entertained.
And I do chuckle every now and again when I think of some of these things, and I kind of look forward every week to the what kind of weird case am I going to have this week?
Let me ask you something. Do you look at the calendar and look at the cases before? Or do you go in there tomorrow and look at them?
No, what I do is I get the files when I get to court earlier in the morning.
Okay.
And they usually hand me all the files. Like I'll have 27 files tomorrow.
Okay, so you haven't seen anything yet.
I don't know.
You don't know
anything
what's going
that's on the calendar. I don't know anything about any of the cases. What I do is I go through each of the cases. First thing I look for is whether or not they're collection cases, because those usually go quickly and they're usually one-sided. So I can get rid of those relatively quick.
Do you put them on the calendar first, or?
I generally do that. I take all the dismissals and the no appearances. What happens is my clerk comes in and we go over the calendar together before I come out, and we look to see who's appearing and who's not. Sometimes nobody appears. I dismiss the cases generally without prejudice, and I just strike them off. We don't even call those cases. Some of them she'll tell me the plaintiff is here, but the defendant is not. So I then note that that's going to be what's called a prove-up case. I'm going to ask a few questions of the plaintiff so I can satisfy myself that there's a legal basis, not a factual basis, a legal basis for the claim. And sometimes the defendant is present, the plaintiff is not. And they jump up and down because their case is going to be dismissed. Unless we've gotten a letter or some other communication from the plaintiff saying there's some justifiable reason why they're not going to be there. So what I generally do is I dismiss those without prejudice, and the plaintiff can refile it at some future time if they want to pursue whatever the rest of the case is. The contested cases, I put a little asterisk next to them. Some of them need interpreters, and we have an interpreter. Some of them, while I'm sitting in chambers reading these things, some of them may end up in mediation. Right. Now, our mediator is out there talking to them. We used to have 2 mediators. One retired. So now we have just John, and he may be talking to some, so I make a note in mediation, so I don't call that case.
Is he a lawyer?
He's not licensed yet.
Okay.
But he is graduated from law school. He has a law degree. He's very, very bright. No, as a lawyer.
Okay, he's a lawyer.
He's very smart.
Okay.
And we've oftentimes kind of laughed about it. In all the years I've been doing it, we've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cases. We've only disagreed on one case.
Wow.
One case.
That's wild.
And it dealt with depreciation of a carpet. He said they shouldn't get it's an old carpet. And I said, well, but it was a nice carpet.
It was a nice carpet. So, nice old carpet.
So that's the only one we ever disagreed on. Then when I come out and I do about a 5-minute speech welcoming, the public, telling them what we do in that court, why it's different than other courts, and certain rules don't apply, and I encourage settlement. encourage them to talk to the mediator if they can. And then after I go through the no appearances, the continuances, some people will come in, and like the collection agencies, a lot of times will ask for a continuance. And I'll say, are you working it out? Yeah, we're working out, trying to work out a settlement. So I said, how much time do you want? 60 days. The clerk enters it into the calendar. I make a note on the actual file. It's been continued at the request of the plaintiff. And then we move on to ultimately to the contested cases. And I try to give enough time for each one of them because I now have read each of the files.
Right. You don't talk about. I think you should. I want to come down and visit you too. Can I come down? Can I come down?
I'll give you the schedule. You come out and visit with us.
I will one day. I will. I promise you.
I'll even introduce you.
Oh, do not.
But I can't say it's the producer.
Okay. It is For the People with Judge Herb Dodell. The book From the Trench to the Bench, available on Amazon.com.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, we'll be back, right?
Yes, we will.
Okay.
10:50 a.m. KCAA.
Herb Dodell is a lawyer and a judge for the people. Having served as a Superior Court judge, presiding over more than 9,000 cases, he has witnessed firsthand how complicated and corrupt the legal system can be. His goal is to show how things really work in the legal system so that people can navigate the legal system in the best way for them. Many people often feel marginalized by the legal system and are uninformed about how to proceed when unfortunate circumstances arise in their life. Judge Herb will pull back the curtain, lift the veil, so people can truly understand their rights, have access to top legal personnel that they can trust, and have knowledge about how things work so they can make better choices. Judge Herb isn't just knowledgeable. His integrity and spiritual values are truly what make him different. He cares about democratizing access and information for all and desires to turn on the light so the people, you, can benefit. For more information, email the judge at askjudgeherb@gmail.com. That's askjudgeherb@gmail.com.
Well, in addition to the questions that I get from other people who hear the show and want to know particular things, I try to think of creative, informational, entertaining, with a nice spiritual twist for all of the shows that we do so that people get a real good sense that they got something out of it. It's not like just listening to a show for 55 minutes and say, that was nice. But if you listen to the show and it fits in within your particular issue, you're going to learn something. Oh, even if it's only informational, you say, oh, that's how that works. So that was kind of interesting, you know.
Yeah.
If you're talking about how many cases we have, the reason I did that is because somebody commented about the day that I had 86 cases. One of the shows I mentioned had 86 cases in one day.
That's crazy.
Insane.
Yeah.
Absolutely insane. Because how can you have justice when you have that kind of load?
You can't, Judge.
But we got rid of a lot of cases that day, too, and a lot got continued and things like that. But the bottom line is it ranges. I'm averaging probably now between 24 and 30 cases a day.
That's still a lot of cases.
Sometimes.
No?
Sometimes. Well, if I've had cases where I've not been able to finish it, so I just kick it over to the next day.
Oh, they must love that. Coming down again.
They don't have to be there the first time. And it's amazing with people, how they appear. People come in shorts.
That's stupid.
Other people come in wearing full dress, suit and tie.
Does it matter to you? Does it really matter to you? Be honest with you. Be honest with us.
Probably not.
Oh, come on.
But I think subliminally there's an impression.
Don't you want somebody to say Your Honor?
No, I don't care.
You don't care about that?
I stopped hearing the Your Honor a long time ago.
You don't care about Your Honor?
The first week, it meant something. You know, it was unique. It was different. I hadn't heard that. Nobody was calling me that.
Yeah.
But now you don't even hear it. You truly don't even hear it. But respect is another story.
Right. Well,
you have to respect the court. It's not about respecting the person. It's respecting the court.
Exactly, and that's what I'm saying. When people come in on shorts and sandals, I mean that's a disrespect. I mean, honestly, I mean just because.
But I can't allow. But I
understand.
But I can say with absolute certainty, it has never made a difference in the outcome of any case that I ever have ruled on.
I agree with you there, but it's still a disrespect to the court.
It is.
Totally.
If I was going to be in that court, and I was in small claims court years ago as a litigant, I put the suit and tie on.
Yeah.
I figured, you're in the court, you want to be perceived as somebody with respect and with dignity. It's a court.
Exactly.
And so I would have gotten dressed. But ultimately, it really doesn't make any difference. I mean, they come in all kinds of outfits.
Yeah,
and I look at it and subliminally, does it make a difference? Maybe.
Any girls look really, really hot for you?
Oh, you love that expression. Are they hot? You absolutely love that expression. Well, the answer is
I love hot chicks. I'm sorry.
There was a very nice looking lady, and I was looking at her.
Okay, did it make a difference?
Not with any prurient interest or anything. But
did it make any difference in your decision?
No.
Yes or no?
And I kept saying to myself, "Gee, she really is pretty."
Right?
But it ultimately didn't make any difference.
A little short mini skirt.
Sentence to the 10 years. No. I don't do the criminal anymore. So, but looks really do make a difference.
I think so.
In anything that you do.
Exactly.
If you're going to go for a job interview, you're not going to go there wearing shorts.
No.
You're going to go there wearing something that's going to be presentable, that you're going to look good.
You might even cut your hair.
I don't think so. They have you on camera? You ever see that mop of hair that you have? Look at that hair.
Thank God.
I'm jealous.
Thank you. You had a nice head of hair back in the day.
In the day, I had hair. I really did.
You did.
And it looked so much better.
Yeah, you're.
But I said to my wife, I said, should I do the thing with the hair? No, absolutely not.
Your wife's very nice, by the way. She's
nice. Thank you. Thank you very much. Person. Anyway, what we're going to talk about today is a topic that people have been asking me about.
Okay.
And it's a very interesting intellectual topic. Cyberbullying.
Oh, yeah.
Talking about texts and things like that. I don't know if I ever mentioned it in one of the prior shows, but you know who Gloria Allred is, of course.
Of course. I've had her on my radio show many times.
Well, somebody was really harassing Gloria Allred. Hundreds of texts and nasty whatever. I guess they didn't relate to Gloria.
I mean, did they have a case with her or something like that, or they just didn't like her?
I don't know what the origination of it was, what the genesis was, but her partner, Mike Morocco, came in and they'd filed papers for a restraining order against this person who was really driving her nuts. And so I listened to all the testimony. The guy didn't show up. It was just the declarations from Gloria, and we can take declarations, by the way, folks.
What's a declaration for people that don't know what a declaration is?
A declaration is like a letter.
Okay.
Only it's done usually under penalty of perjury. And it says, I, Gary Garver, state as follows, and it lists all the facts. And you're swearing under penalty of perjury. In a lot of places, they're not admissible because it's really hearsay. The person filing that declaration is not there to be cross-examined. And in restraining order cases, there is cross-examination. So you're really being deprived as a respondent of the ability to impeach the person who did the declaration. But it's admissible because hearsay is admissible in small claims court too, and restraining order court, but not in most other courts.
Yeah.
There are exceptions to what they call the hearsay rule, allowing it to come in if it's a business record, if it's an admission, if it's a dying declaration. The guy's laying on the curb getting hit by the car and he yells out in his last moment, "The guy made a left-hand turn in front of me," or whatever it is. That's called the res gestae, the Latin term for it. Every now and again, I like to use a Latin term. That makes me sound smarter. And that's called the res gestae. Dying declarations, that's admissible too. So there are exceptions to the hearsay rule, and you should know that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really matter in small claims because there's no lawyers who know what hearsay is, or there's an objection or an exception to the objection. So I always tell people, if you're going to be in small claims court, read something about where you're going and what you can do and how you're going to do it. The 5-minute speech that I do in the morning gives you some basic outlines, but it really doesn't tell you the depth of what you could do. Look, there are remedies available, and then I'm going to get into cyberbullying. There are remedies available that are not only monetary. We can compel people to do things.
Like what?
We can order specific performance of things. We could force people to return something.
Okay.
We can rescind a contract, which I've done a number of times. But rescission is a legal term. It means you start over, basically. Whatever it was is gone, as though it never existed. And so what happens there is you got to return the consideration to each other, so you really do start from scratch. But the contract is over. I think I told the story about the car guy. He was having a real difficult time with his car, and he didn't want to keep the car anymore. So I listened to the car dealer and whatever, and they were having all kinds of excuses that they had it back and they had to get the warranty and whatever it was. And what I ultimately decided to do was I said, okay, give him the car back, and you give him back any money that's owed to him, and the contract is over. He's done. He owes you no more obligation, and you are not to report him as delinquent on his credit report. But we have tremendous, truly tremendous power and opportunity to resolve situations. So I say to people, if you've got a claim it's worth less than $10,000, go to small claims court.
Yeah, well, I've been
Place
there
to
a few
go.
times, you know.
Baldy the Clown.
Well,
Baldy.
That's one.
Okay. So, well, let's go back to cyberbullying. The problem with that issue is there's a very fine line between free speech and restraint. A restraining order means exactly that. You're not allowed to do something, and you're not allowed to say something. So we are stopping people from exercising what they perceive to be their rights. And so we have to decide, and it's a balancing act almost all the time. What about picketing? Picketing is a protected event.
Isn't that the right of some
You have
Americans?
a right, yes, but you can't picket in a way that was going to impede people getting in and out of a person's business.
Right.
That we can enjoin.
Well, you can get arrested for that too, right?
Enjoin it, but that's not subject to a free speech argument. You can't impede people from going in and out of a place. But a lot of it is now dealing with the internet.
Yeah, let me ask you about cyberbullying. I mean, because, I mean, a lot of people are posting really nasty things.
Tough stuff.
To people. And, I mean, even they're like kids, especially the generation now, these kids, I mean, they're really doing cyberbullying, and where people are like, these kids are committing suicide or acting out like this guy did in Florida, this nutcase did. I mean, he was like some sort of weirdo that was being, I guess, bullied or whatever, or he was bullying people. I mean, what's the law there? I mean, how can how can you get away with it, or what can you do about it? Let's say your kid's being bullied, cyberbullied. What can you do about it?
Well, first of all, it's an evolving subject right now because the internet is not that old.
Yeah.
And some of the responsibility really does belong to the companies, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or whatever it is. They should, in my opinion, it's only my opinion, they should monitor a little bit better of what they allow to be put on and available to millions of people. I mean, there should be some way of regulating without infringing on a First Amendment right.
Yeah.
First Amendment right is very, very important. That's why it was called the First Amendment.
Of course.
Free speech. There's a case that goes back in the 1920s. Oliver Wendell Holmes was one of the great Supreme Court justices in our history. And he said, free speech does not allow you to yell fire in a crowded movie theater.
Right.
And that's true. So we have to look at whether or not the speech is encouraging violence. Actually, they could do that. That's not enjoinable.
Well, look what happened with this guy, Jonathan Martin. I don't know if you saw the story where he made a threat on Instagram with a rifle to Harvard Westlake High School right here down the street.
Just recently.
Yeah, just Friday. And basically he made this post with a rifle and said something about bullying and suicide. And they detained him. They actually picked him up, and he had a gun in his car. And this guy was an offensive lineman for the Miami Dolphins that was bullied by other teammates.
I kind of remember that.
Yes, he was bullied by other teammates. Okay,
yeah, I remember
and
that,
and I mean, here's this guy, he's 6'4", 300 pounds, being bullied. It's sort of crazy, but like you said, with the First Amendment, I mean, here this guy posted this Instagram picture of a rifle with the I don't know, hashtag bullying and hashtag suicide or something like that, and he made a threat to the high school, and they detained him and found a couple guns.
Well, it's like the story I've told it, I think, on one or maybe even two of the shows. True story. Well, they're all true stories. I had a young woman in the court. She came in and said that she's being threatened, and it's on her phone. So she had her phone with her. I said, okay, I'll look at it. So she goes to the bailiff. The bailiff brings it up. I look at it. And there's this lady sitting on the floor with a beer can in one hand and a gun in the other with a comment underneath that was pretty threatening.
Right.
Well, you know that's not free speech. And that, to me, presented a clear potential threat of violence, credible threat of violence. So obviously I signed that order, which required her to turn over her gun within 24 hours. That's the rule. Not that anybody's enforcing it. We're going to find out about enforcing these rules next week.
Okay.
Because we've got a sheriff coming here next week.
We do, Sheriff Bob Lindsay.
And he's going to come in and talk to us about, and I'm going to ask him some questions about how the system really works from a mechanical standpoint. In other words, what happens when you sign the order? We do it the same day. We sign it, it goes to the sheriff the same day, the sheriff or LAPD or whoever it is, they get it right away. Next question is, how do you implement it? And we'll talk about that. Are we getting ready to cut into a commercial?
Yeah, we're going to take a break. Let's talk about it after the break.
Okay. Sounds like a plan.
All right. It's for the people at Judge Herb Dodell. If you got any questions for the judge, you can email him. Actually, email an acting judge at askjudgeherb@gmail.com. We'll be back after this.
NBC Talk Radio, 1050 AM, KCAA.
In his book, From the Trench to the Bench, Judge Herb Dodell demystifies the legal system, including both civil and criminal, the lawyers, the judges, and the process. As a judge, former deputy district attorney, and criminal defense attorney, he knows the legal system. He has the inside information that you need to pick a lawyer, and he's here to give it to you. No matter what you're facing that makes you think you may need a lawyer, Judge Herb will shed valuable light on your situation and reveal your best options and many secrets of how the judicial system actually works. To find out more about how the legal system really works, you can get your copy of Judge Herb Dodell's eye-opening book, From the Trench to the Bench, at Amazon.com.
Okay, we're back. There is such a fine line, really, between what is a threat and what's just ordinary harassment.
Yeah, I mean, let me ask you something.
There's a big difference.
Yeah, on Facebook. I mean, if somebody posts something on Facebook or Instagram or even a text message, basically just goofing on somebody and harassing them on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or whatever the social media is, or an actual threat, what's the difference? If somebody's like totally like with Gloria Allred, I guess they were constantly hassling her, and then finally you issued a restraining order against this person. But what is the difference between like a threat and harassment, and where do you cross the line with just harassing someone?
Okay, well, I'll differentiate the two for you. But first, let me tell you that I ran into Mike Morocco, who's Gloria Allred's partner, about 6 months later, and I've known Mike for forever. And I said, well, anything happened? He says, the day you signed the order and it got served on this guy, text stopped.
Yep.
So when people say, well, yeah, restraining order, people aren't going to pay any attention to it. Well, that's not true. These things are meant to be enforced, and we're going to hear more about that from Bob Lindsay next week. But the fact of the matter is, they're serious.
Let me ask a quick question. If somebody like gets a restraining order against them and they keep on harassing that person, what's the legal ramifications?
Okay, first I'm going to tell you another true story.
Are you sure these are true?
Especially either that or their imagination, and I must have a big imagination.
Okay, but they're all true.
But this was interesting because there were two doctors.
All right.
There's a male doctor and a much younger female doctor, and they worked at the same clinic. And she had gotten a temporary restraining order against the male doctor.
Okay.
He was harassing her, and he was sending her all kinds of text messages all day. They finally fired him from the job where he was, I guess, a specialist in one department there. They fired him from the job, so there was already an outstanding order, and here he is. He's still doing it.
Okay.
Still doing it. And she's saying he's harassing me, and he's saying she loves me. I said, what does it take for you to understand? She's writing back to you, and she's telling you to stop bothering her. What don't you understand? It doesn't mean she loves you. In fact, you violated the order. I didn't sign the original temporary restraining order, but there it was. It was in the file. I said, you know, you've already violated the offer. I could put you in jail right now because it's a contempt of court. And you're not denying it. You're calling, well, she loves me. No. Forget about she loves me. And I ended up giving a permanent restraining order to the young female doctor, but he was still around. Now, if he had been gone, he'd been fired or he left and he moved to Pomona, I probably wouldn't have done anything.
Right.
Because it was not a continuing course of conduct. And that is a very, very significant element of a restraining order. It has to be going on. And so consequently, if you're being bothered, sue him. You can sue him for nuisance. You could sue him for intentional infliction of emotional distress. Absolutely.
I didn't know that.
And small claims court. But you're limited to $10,000.
Right.
And so you ask the difference between harassment and threats.
Yes.
A threat is pretty simple. I'm going to do something to you.
Right.
And is it a credible threat? Well, do they have the ability to do it? Can they go out and get a gun? They could probably buy a gun in the black market any time.
Let me ask something. Somebody sends a text message and says, I'm going to kill you. Is that, I mean, just those statements, they don't have a gun, they didn't buy a gun or nothing. Would that be enough of a threat to get a restraining order against somebody?
But you don't know if they have a gun or not.
Well, I'm saying, is that saying that statement, I'm going to kill you, is that enough to get a restraining order?
If it's coupled with some overt action, maybe a history, a relationship, something like that, then you have to look at the totality of the circumstances. If it's just a one-time, you know, you said it, whatever, now I'm going to go kill you, and nothing happens for 6 months or whatever it is, that's not going anywhere.
Okay, all right.
But harassment is different. Harassment is you just keep on bothering somebody. You keep on calling them. You keep on writing to them. You know, you're hanging out. And stalking is kind of like an harassment too.
Totally.
But let's assume you're standing across the street from somebody's house that you want to meet or get involved with, or it's a star or a celebrity. And I've had celebrity cases before too, where they've been followed by some of their fans. I had a radio disc jockey, a female disc jockey, come in. She came herself and said she can't handle it. This guy is just all over her. Everywhere she goes, he goes.
Wow.
And so I granted that one, as a matter of fact, as I remember.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter, it's all a matter of degree.
Right.
How far does harassment go so it could be considered harassment sufficient enough to issue a restraining order?
So there's not real, like, clear line.
Not a lot of them are clear lines.
Yeah.
There are some that are not. I had a guy come in who was waving a machete in a driveway, and he scared all the neighbors.
It scared the hell out of anybody.
Was he capable of doing it? Probably was. He seemed like a little on the nutty side when I was talking to him.
Yeah.
And you just have to, as the trier of fact, because that's what the judges are, as triers of fact, we have to kind of evaluate who we're talking to here, who is doing what to whom, and how credible it is. I think I told the story about the girls with the pepper spray. I don't know if I did or I didn't, but I had two ladies fighting over the boyfriend. She pepper sprayed me 4 times. That's what the petitioner was saying. And the respondent says, I don't even own a pepper spray. And so there was this dispute. And I looked at the police report, because there was a police report in the file, or somebody had produced a copy of the police report. And even though it's hearsay, normally not admissible, I was going to consider it because you can. And I did. I said, there's no reference in here to pepper spray. In fact, when you filed your petition for a restraining order, you never mentioned anything about pepper spray.
Yeah.
Well, no, she tried to. I said, oh, so that's different. She tried to or she did? Well, she was going to. Well, you know where that case went.
Yeah.
Nowhere.
Exactly. Yep.
And it was because of the credibility of the petitioner. She didn't have any credibility. And a lot of people come in and use the system for their own personal motivation. I'm going to get even with that person. I'm going to show them. I'm going to get revenge. All of those things are commonplace. We have to really wade through all of the junk, and a lot of it is junk. We got to wade through it to see whether or not there's anything realistic about it. But First Amendment rights are very significant. We don't restrain people from saying things unless there's a real reason to do that. You can encourage people to act in violence as a general rule, as an act of revolution. If you're speaking to the public about something of public interest, that's a legitimate purpose. People can sue you if you defame them, And that's usually what happens. If you say nasty things on say, Facebook about someone, other than commenting that the food is awful at the restaurant and small portions.
I'll go to Yelp.
But you know what? There's not a lot you can do about it.
Yeah.
You know, let's say you have a business.
Right.
And somebody gets pissed off at you and they start writing how bad you are.
Right.
That's going to hurt you.
Yeah. But they can't do anything about it.
Well, they can. They could sue for defamation.
Yeah.
If it meets the qualifications for defamation.
Okay, so what's defamation? What would meet the let's say I went to a restaurant and they were terrible service, the food sucked,
and it was too small portions.
And the small portions, and the waitresses or waiter was a jerk, and I just went on Facebook and just totally slammed them over and over again. Would that be defamation?
No.
Okay. What's defamation?
Because an opinion is generally not sufficient to constitute the cause of action for defamation, as long as it's an opinion.
Right.
It's usually a statement of fact that's untrue, that you know is untrue, which is designed to affect adversely the other party. So that's a general statement. That's not. I could quote you the actual language from the statute, but that's a generalization of what defamation is.
So if I said there was a rat in my food, that would be and there wasn't. That would be defamation. I said, hey, I got served a rat.
Well, that's a statement of fact. It's untrue.
Right. So is that defamation?
That's probably defamation.
Can I say that? I know a restaurant I want to burn right now. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
That's exactly the point.
No, I'm joking.
I'm thinking about that.
Yeah, I'm just asking.
I think I'd have to listen to the testimony to see how.
Like tomorrow. You get a case. Okay.
I get some strange.
That's why I'm asking. That's why I'm giving you one of them. So I go in there and this restaurant sucked, and the service blew, and everything was terrible about it, and. Of course, I didn't get a rat in my food, but I go online on Facebook and say, hey, don't eat at Joe's place. Well, I should not even say that, but don't eat at so-and-so's place. Because I found a rat in my food, and you don't want to eat there. Could the Joe's Diner or whatever go and say, sue me because for defamation because I said there was a rat in my food?
That probably would meet the minimum threshold.
Would you? So I would get. It's
a judgment.
Okay.
Let's assume you go to small claims court with that. You could do that.
Okay. That's what I'm saying. You'd find against me. You'd find against me.
What you'd have to do is prove it.
Okay.
And the way you would prove that kind of thing is
go find a rat.
Well, you're not referring to the customers. The fact is, though, that it's an issue of fact. And let's say that on an average week, this restaurant was doing X amount of dollars. That's what they were doing for the last 2 years.
$10,000 a week.
Now, all of a sudden, after the publication, that's the legal term for saying these things, it's called publication. Doesn't necessarily have to be in writing. Even the speaking statement like that is considered a publication.
Okay.
You'd have to be able to say, okay, well, since this publication on Facebook or Yelp or whatever it is that they put it on, our business has dropped to $7,000 a week. Been 10 for years. Now it's only 7. And people are saying, I read the story about the rat. Where is he sitting?
You dirty rat.
That kind of, yeah, he says, I want stuffed rat. I'm from Indonesia. Whatever.
Is that what they eat there? Oh my God!
I have no idea. And I'm not meaning to infer that that's the national food of Indonesia. But the fact of the matter is, if you can prove it,
okay.
You say, look, I'm going to get over it. I'm going to take a big ad out and say it wasn't a rat, it was a pheasant, or whatever it is you're going to say. You can do that.
Okay.
The problem with trying to explain away things is you end up reinforcing it. Every time you become too defensive, it sounds like you're trying to justify something that was justifiable before for somebody to do it to you.
Yeah.
And so you have to kind of run with it. That happens all the time. People go to get their car fixed and they say, horrible job. I drove around the corner and it broke down again. But that's comment.
Yeah.
That's free speech.
Right. Okay.
And you got a right to do that.
Okay.
But there's a case called Brecky, Brekke versus Brecky, where this 15-year-old was writing to his girlfriend. She was 15. And saying how he was going to kill her parents.
Wow.
And he went into graphic detail about that.
Yes.
And so the mother came in and said, look, this is a clear threat. He said, but his argument was, well, it was a private communication between me and my girlfriend. And so how could it be a real threat? But the answer was, and the Court of Appeals said, but he knew that the mother was going to read this.
Right.
So even though it wasn't written to her, the mother, it was implied that he was doing it and it was considered a threat. And that's what happened. A restraining order was issued. It was a case of a published opinion. So it kind of stands for the proposition that if it's a real threat, credible threat, and even without intent, whether he was going to do it or not, restraining order makes sense.
All right. It is Judge Herb Dodell for the people. His book, From the Trench to the Bench. Get it at Amazon.com. We'll be back with more from the judge right after this.
NBC Talk Radio, 1050 AM, KCAA.
Did you ever meet a lawyer that was for the people? Someone who had the best interests of the people at heart? Herb Dodell has been a lawyer for more than 50 years and has been a Superior Court judge for 9 years, having presided over more than 9,000 cases. In this show, he will reveal the secrets of how things really work in the legal system, so you can maximize your position and benefit most when you're in trouble and need someone on your side to simplify the process for you. For more information, email the judge at askjudgeherb@gmail.com. That's askjudgeherb@gmail.com.
Now, people have been asking me about what happened in Florida and would it have made any difference about restraining orders, because some of the people I was talking to knew that I was doing that for a while, handling restraining order cases. Would it have made any difference? Probably not in this case.
You don't think so?
No, I think this kid was off the rails.
But I mean, wouldn't they take his guns away and
Well, they got to know he has guns. The proposal that I've been making, and we're going to talk about it next week.
Right.
Anybody against whom there's been a restraining order issued should be part of a national database.
Amen.
That guy would never have gotten a gun unless he bought it off the street, black market. A lot of these people don't have access to the black market. That's not where they're going to go. So if they can't buy it at the gun store or at a show or something like that, they're not going to get one. If he had gone in to try to get a gun and he already had a restraint and there was plenty of grounds, he had made a lot of threats in that school before.
Oh, please.
And so it would have been a walk in the park. In fact, I was talking to an employment lawyer today saying, as an employer, if you got somebody that looks like they're a real danger, I'm not talking just a fictional or maybe fantasy, whatever it is, you got a real situation, go down there and get that restraining order, because that person is a real threat and they may be able to get a gun and come back and do something that they said they were going to do. Under those circumstances, the seller would not sell the gun. This guy wouldn't have had an AR-15, wouldn't have had any real meaningful weapons that he could have done what he did. And restraining orders really do work. You asked me a question earlier. Show you I'm still thinking, got short-term memory here.
I did? What did I ask you?
Forget the question.
Hey, I want to ask you. I do want to ask you a question with the restraining orders. Is that a federal law about taking away the gun? Is it just a state
law?
So it's a state law. So the state of California takes away the gun. How about the state? Do you know the state of Florida? What they do? Would they take if they had a restraining order against him? Would they have taken away his guns?
I don't know, but I would think so.
Okay. All right.
Because one of
that should be a federal law, man.
That's what I've been trying to say.
Judge,
we should have this as part of our federal system. So if you sell a gun to a guy like this guy Nunez, this guy Cruz, you sell a gun to him and he's on the database and he goes out and he does it, you're responsible. I think we talked about it last week, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, we did.
It's basically a done deal.
Yeah, I mean, because it should be a federal law. I mean, state laws. I mean, all state. I don't get this with the guns and all this. And we talked about this last week, where you can buy a semi-automatic weapon at the age of 18, but you can't purchase alcohol at 18. You can't purchase a handgun at 18. You know, to be 21. I don't understand this. Even Donald Trump said that this is a wrong law. But the NRA is still fighting this stuff. I don't get it.
My personal opinion, not that I always offer personal opinion.
You should on this one.
Well,
people want to know.
My personal opinion is that the kids, the young kids, the millennials are going to make a difference this time.
I hope so.
I think we've seen so much and nothing has been done. And we've seen so much posturing and politicization of this all. I think that there's going to be a big difference. This gal, Emma Gonzalez is her name. She is eloquent. Student.
Right.
And they really do have their finger on the pulse here. And I think it's going to create very interesting issues for the upcoming election. That's a personal opinion. I'm not a political whatever. But I think that this is the time that people are going to wake up and do something.
I hope so, because remember they said that about Sandy Hook, you know, which was it's so disgusting what happened there with these little kids. I hope they do. I hope, you know, somebody speaks up. I mean, and keeps the speech going, and you know, because this is ridiculous what the NRA is doing. I'm sorry. I mean, they won't allow any laws. They don't want any change to anything, even bump stocks or the age limit or anything. And
for them, it's philosophical.
It's ridiculous.
It's philosophical. Ugh. There's a view that is very intransigent, and it's not going to change. Don't expect any changes from the organization. I don't think. There may be some. They may get along with the bump stock, but I don't think anything much is going to happen. You asked me earlier about the enforceability. I remember your question.
Okay.
The fact is that if somebody violates a restraining order, and I've mentioned it before, but I don't know if people have heard those shows, so let me repeat it.
Yeah, please do.
If you violate a restraining order, it's a crime. Like any other crime, and I've said it before, people seem to get arrested on Friday afternoons. They just do. I never could quite figure that out, but they do. Because I remember when I was DA on Mondays, we were always very busy.
Slammed.
We were busy.
Slammed.
And they drag you into court. First of all, they put you in, it's a lockup.
Right.
You know, and then bail has to be set. By the time you get a hold of the bail magistrate or whoever it is, you sit there until you get out. And then you got to hire a lawyer. And if you can't afford a lawyer, you get the public defender who's overworked. And they haven't got to really have a lot of time for you because they are really overworked.
Yeah, they are.
I feel sorry for those people. I really do. Their calendars are horrible.
Yeah.
And they have so much to do. It's all about making deals. It's Monty Hall every day for those people.
Right.
And if not, it's like the two doctors. Now, that doctor that came in and was violating a temporary restraining order, at that moment, he was already in contempt. I could have done something.
You could have thrown him in jail.
I could have.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to do it, but I could have.
Yeah.
And I warned him. I said, you know, you've already violated the order. Now this is a permanent order. If you come in contact within 100 yards of this woman, 100 feet, I guess it was, of this woman, you're going to be sitting it out.
But she loves me.
She did. He did. I could picture guy. I'm looking at you, but it's not him.
Oh please, man! I would never do something like that.
I kept saying to myself, he's a guy highly educated. He was a fellow or some kind. He was really a well educated.
He's a friggin' doctor.
And here he was hassling this lady.
God.
Over and over and over again.
Wow.
So, and even Gloria, you know, Gloria loves the publicity. She's into it all the time.
Oh, yeah, she is.
But she got pretty bruised by this person who was calling her, writing her. I don't know what else he was doing, but there was justification for it. So it's a criminal offense, and you face the first time out probably a slap on the wrist and maybe a weekend, maybe not.
But isn't that a red flag? You know what I mean?
Of course.
If you issue a restraining order, which is pretty serious, I mean, it stays on your record, like you said. It's in the database. I think there's right. I mean, people know about it. There's also the taking away of the guns, and then you go and continue it. Isn't that like that is really? Well, I mean, especially nowadays, Judge, because people are going off the hook and they're going off the rails. That I would say that's a very serious offense now because people are just doing crazy things.
Maybe more so now than before.
That's what I'm saying.
The fact is, the first time out, it's like a probation violation in regular criminal law.
God.
Usually, the first time there's a probation violation, unless it's really serious,
That is serious.
Generally, what we did when I was in the DA's office, what you generally did is you revoked the probation, you reinstated on the same terms and conditions, on condition that the person serves a weekend or 30 days or pays a fine or does public service, something like that. First time out's not so bad. It's enough to keep you aware that, there's a string around your neck. But the second time out, it's another story. The second time out, you start looking at jail time because you can see that those people are incorrigible. You gave them a break the first time. The second time, they're still back there again. The third time might be even worse.
I mean, for the person that's going through this, you got to have fear. I mean, I'm a pretty strong dude, and nobody screws with me. But if somebody was harassing me and I got a restraining order against them, and then they violated it the first time, I would be freaked out, and then a second time, I'd be really paranoid. I mean, and I'm a strong dude. I can just imagine somebody who, like a woman or sort of a weaker type of individual. I mean, it's a very, especially nowadays with all these crazies are out there. I mean, don't you think it should be
crazies? Right,
armed crazies. Don't you think it should be taken a little bit more serious nowadays?
I do.
Do you think we should change the law on this at all?
We really don't need to change the law. Believe it or not, when I was thinking about it, in fact, when I thought about the suggestion about the Dodell database and the seller's requirements and reporting it if anybody's trying to buy a gun or things of that nature, I had just decided that case with the girl with the beer can and the gun. And I said to myself, we have a mechanism. It's already in existence. We should enforce it. It's not that we need new laws. We have the laws. We can tighten up the domestic violence and make them more consistent with the other so that there's some uniformity, which is what we really should do. But that's mechanical. We don't need to make any new laws. The rule is that they're supposed to notify the court on a form within 48 hours that they did it, that they turned the gun over and here's a certificate. They never do. I don't think I've ever seen one.
Well, what do you do about it?
All the years that I've
well, I mean, what can we do about it?
It's up to law enforcement. I'm going to talk to Lindsay next week and ask him, why don't you guys do anything about it? He's going to tell me how understaffed they are, and how overworked they are.
Yes, he will.
And this is not at the top of the list of priorities, and that's going to be the explanation. And that's the explanation for a lot of things.
Okay.
And so the bottom line is enforceable. It's already there. Needs to be enforced.
Well, I mean, this is what's going. Look what happened in Broward County with these deputy sheriffs, and they had this kid Cruz. 38, 39 times he was reported.
Oh, that one, that one. They say about falling between the cracks.
I mean, come on.
It's like falling into the Grand Canyon. That one, they knew that one. That was a no-brainer, an absolute no-brainer. How they didn't do a thing with this guy is beyond me. To my way of thinking, that's gross negligence.
Okay.
Whether it was the FBI or whether it was the local cops or whether it was the sheriff or whether it was the school, whoever it was, that was gross negligence.
Yeah.
And it cost 17 people their lives.
Do you think the sheriff should be fired? They're talking about firing him.
No. Well, there's always got to be a scapegoat for something. It's not his fault that the guys didn't run in. They were trained to run in. He wasn't standing there and telling them to do it or not do it. I don't see that he has any personal responsibility other than to make sure that we enforce it and that they enforce it in the future. There'll be changes made there in Broward County and in other places across the country by the lesson that we just learned from this tragic experience that we had.
I hope so.
This is where we're going.
Well, we need to get your law in gear here. I love it. I think we should do that. A database, a national database for restraining orders against people that threaten other people. It's crazy that we don't.
And you know what? People think it's only neighbors. Neighbors shoot neighbors too.
Oh yeah, totally.
Look at the guy that beat up on Rand Paul. He beat him up with a lawnmower or something.
Yes.
So you're a big fan of Rand Paul.
No comment. I'm not political, Judge. You know that.
You're not. Well,
we got to roll.
We're going to talk next week to Bob Lindsay, and I think that should be a very interesting section of information for you folks out there. Great. So it's worth listening. We're going to use the whole hour with him.
Cool.
Normally we only do 15 minutes. We're going to do a whole hour with Bob Lindsay. It should be very, very educational.
Okay.
So we'll see you next week.
All right. It's for the people. Judge Herb Dodell. Get his book From the Trench to the Bench on Amazon.com. Great show, Judge, as always.
So, you want to be in show business. Do people tell you that you're really funny, you have a great personality, and you should have your own talk show?